What I do, YouTube? It's your boy King David in this thing, and I'm back at y'all again with another video. So before I get going on this video, man, I'ma need y'all to go ahead and hit that like button, and if you're new here, be sure to subscribe one time for your boy so we can continue to grow like we need to grow here. Alright, so with all that out the window, man, y'all see what the title of the video is, man. The reason Errol Spence versus Yordenis Ugas is still ducking. Alright, so cool. Let me just say first and foremost, man, Yordenis Ugas versus Errol Spence, man, I actually think it's a good fight. I think it's a good fight, man. I think it's, it's a very interesting stylistic clash between two top welterweights. I think that it's also a meaningful fight, given the fact that it's a unification fight. So it's very meaningful. And overall, man, I just think it's a good fight. But with all that being said, man, it's just not the fight that we need right now as boxing fans. It's not the fight that we want. It's not the fight that boxing needs. Therefore, it's a fight in the way of the fight that boxing needs, in the way of the fight that boxing wants. Honestly, man, I really feel like, based on Errol Spence and his team making these maneuvers in order to set up this fight, honestly, man, I feel like it's ducking. And I feel like the chances of a Terence Crawford versus Errol Spence fight happening are slim to none at this particular point. So the reason I say that, man, is honestly and truly, you really got to look at the patterns when it comes to Errol Spence versus Terence Crawford. This ain't our first rodeo, man. This ain't the first time we've seen a barrier placed in front of Errol Spence versus Terence Crawford. And again, you got to pay attention to the patterns here, man. There's a pattern of Errol Spence placing barriers in front of the fight, and Terence Crawford doing any and everything he can do in order to remove those barriers so he can make the fight happen with Errol Spence. If we take it all the way back, to get a belt first, the side of the street, the easy route, the 60, 40, 70, 30, the 60, 40, 70, 30, or whatever I give you. Listen to all these barriers that Errol Spence placed in front of the fight. Okay? And look at all the efforts and all the things that Terence Crawford has done in order to remove those barriers from the fight. When we talk about the get a belt first, we seen Terence Crawford get the WBO belt and look for the Errol Spence and the Keith Thurman smoke when he moved up to the welterweight division. When you talk about the easy route, Errol took his easy route. He fought Sean Porter. He fought Danny Garcia. Those were the dudes that were at the forefront of the easy route. He couldn't get Pacquiao, but that ain't got nothing to do with Terence Crawford or his inability to take the easy route. When you look at the side of the street, Terence Crawford fired Bob Arum, eliminated the side of the street, and now he can fight on Showtime, he can fight on ESPN, he can fight on DAZN, he can fight on whatever network he want to fight on because he's a free agent. You look at the fact that the 60, 40, 70, 30 thing, first of all, that ain't even a real offer to begin with. Nobody's sent anything over, nobody's offered anything. But Bud has made it clear that he's looking to make the fight at any and every turn. Nevertheless, every time each barrier is cleared, a new one is placed in its way. And that's exactly what we got here with this Errol Spence versus Yordenis Ugas fight. It's another barrier, another hurdle placed in the way of Terence Bud Crawford versus Errol Spence on behalf of Errol Spence. Once again, now I know a lot of y'all thinking right now, y'all like, well, King David, man, get to the point, bro. Like, what you mean, bro? Like, how is this a barrier? This is a unification fight. It should be a good fight. We are kind of excited about it. Unification, you can't call that a duck, but you can call it a duck. One way you call it a duck is because there's a pattern of this behavior. There's a pattern of different barriers being placed in front of the fight. But in addition to that, let's look further into this particular situation. Let's look at the fact that Errol Spence paid this guy, Stanionis, to step aside in order to fight Yordenis Ugas. Why in the hell would you need to do that? Why in the hell would you need to pay a guy, step aside money, in order to fight the inferior fight of the division? You got the biggest fight in the division, Terence Crawford versus Errol Spence, that's ready to go, rearing to go. You got the biggest fight that's rearing to go, but you pay step aside money so you can take the lesser of the two fights. Where'd I do that at? When and where in boxing has anyone paid step aside money for a smaller or an inferior fight? Who does that, and why would you do that if not to get away from the guy who's the bigger fight? You think to yourself, Ugas has a belt, that's why he's fighting Ugas. Well, Terence Crawford has a belt as well. There's nothing that Ugas brings to the table that Terence Crawford doesn't bring to the table. When you talk about accolades, when you talk about a belt, when you talk about money, Terence Crawford is superior to Yordenis Ugas as an opponent, superior to Yordenis Ugas as an opponent in every single way there is. So how do you justify fighting a Yordenis Ugas over a Terence Bud Crawford? If you listen to some of his fans, they say it's because it's a tune-up. Well, is it because of a tune-up, or is it because it's strap season? Because you gotta pick one at the end of the day. If it's a tune-up, then you gotta take the L, because Earl said he don't need no tune-ups. And if it's strap season, why come out your pocket money so that way you can fight in an inferior, less lucrative fight than the one you already have in front of you on the table? Earl and Team Earl came out of their pocket to pay Stanionis so they wouldn't have to fight Bud Crawford, and that's literally what it boils down to. Money that you could have used to pay Bud Crawford and Errol Spence, you could have put that in their purse. You took it out of their purse and gave it to a Ugas, or you gave it to a Stanionis, in order for you to prevent the biggest fight in boxing from happening at the end of the day. That's all there is. That's all it could be. But then I'm not done, because you paid this dude step aside money, and not step aside's money, plural. That means that after this Ugas Errol Spence situation is resolved, what's to stop Stanionis from standing in the way once again and deciding that he wants the winner of that fight? And Errol Spence and his fans justifying the fact that he has to fight Stanionis because he's a mandatory fight, quote unquote. So not only do we have to suffer through this Ugas fight, but afterwards we may have a potential Stanionis fight that may come right afterwards, along with the other mandatory for the WBA, Butte. But even if you don't want to count Butte, think about the other guys around the division who are in position to challenge Errol Spence. Think about the Victor Ortizes and the Jerron Boots Ennises, who are sitting right in that prime spot for those belts. The WBC, when you're talking about Virgil Ortiz at the number 1 spot. The IBF, when you're talking about Jerron Boots Ennis in the number 3 spot. Think about those guys being in prime position for a fight to be mandated and ripe for them to challenge Errol Spence for one of those belts. And then think about the fact that Earl could have to vacate one of those belts in order to fight a Bud Crawford or anybody else should he decide to do so at any point in time. So if Errol Spence has to vacate one of these belts, because that's definitely a possibility given the fact that these guys are in position. If Errol Spence has to vacate, would that justify the bullshit that he's doing right now? If Jerome Boots Ennis and Virgil Ortiz and Iga Staniotis and Butte decide that they do not want to step aside, it means that Errol Spence Jr. decided to shit on this perfect opportunity to make a fight with Terence Bud Crawford, because he does not want to fight Terence Bud Crawford at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, the plan all along was to be put in this kind of situation and not fight Terence Bud Crawford. That's how I'm feeling right about now. You know what I'm saying? You know, and it's kind of crazy because at one point, man, I was optimistic about the fight, man. But this recent move by Errol Spence leads me to believe he has no intention of fighting Terence Bud Crawford to begin with. You don't pay guys step aside money if you have intention of fighting. You could have fought Terence Crawford, and then next year, after you beat Terence Crawford, if you beat Terence Crawford, of course, then next year, when all the business is wrapped up with the WBA, could have turned around and you could have picked up that belt later on this year. So you tell me, is it ducking? Because I damn sure think so. I'm going to end the video right here, man. Let me know what you think. Hit it up in the comment section below. If you're new to the channel, make sure you like the video or subscribe to the channel. And everybody, make sure you like the video. But until next time, man, I'm going to holler at y'all. Peace.
You've beaten Kell Brook now, Mikey Garcia, Sean Porter, and Danny Garcia. Who do you want next?
Oh, I'm gonna chill on my ranch. I just bought a new ranch. I got a couple of horses. I'm gonna get some more horses, get some chickens, some